Morning. Bryant, Cam, and I were meeting, probably a couple of months ago, and Bryant noticed, he said, each of us is a part of a different age group. Wouldn't it be interesting if we took some time and talked through on a Sunday morning what it was like to be part of that age group, maybe some of the struggles that age group goes through, the things that we've learned or as part of that age group. And so Bryant started us off last week, and Cam will close us up next week. And we'll get some chance to talk about what it means, I guess, almost personally for us, some personal reflection, and then maybe some broader reflection too for not only our particular age group, but how the age groups can help each other. And like Brian said last week, the seniors can be there to help the younger people, the seniors, and vice versa. That we do things sometimes in our particular age group, but obviously as a church we're called to be one body. And what does it look like for a church to be intergenerational, to have the generations mix and be together, and maybe talking about some of those things as well. So when I started at Mars Hill, I think I would have been the one to be the young guy in the series. That was 16 years ago, and it's been about 20 years since I gave my life to Christ. The way I say it is I grew up believing in God and believing in Jesus. In college, I kind of wrestled with, do I believe in Jesus just because that's what everybody else did, and I had to get my own faith. And so at about the age of 24, or at the age of 24, I said, no, I believe in Jesus, and I want to live my life for him. And so that's been 20 years for me now. And then probably the biggest thing that shows my age is my son just started his full-time career. So I have a son now that's in the full-time workforce. I think I qualify as middle age. And I don't know that I like that. I can't deny it, but I guess I fit the role, so I have to play it. And it was probably a few months even before this where I thought of myself in that term as middle age. And like Brian alluded to, I think all of us like to think of ourselves as younger than we are. And sometimes maybe I act like a 20-year-old. Sometimes I think I'm a 20-year-old, and then my body quickly reminds me I'm no longer a 20-year-old. And Kathy quickly reminds me I'm no longer a 20-year-old. I've got to grow up a little bit and act a little older. So I get to play this role as the middle-aged guy. And as I thought about this a little bit, I think Cam's in that younger age group. He's butting up on 25, and maybe up to 25 you're going to school, going to college, maybe grad school, dating, maybe renting an apartment, renting a house. There's a lot that you're preparing for. It's a time of preparation for what life has ahead of you, somewhere in that mid-20s age. And then at some point, I think maybe life becomes a little bit about reflection and kind of looking back on the life that you led. And then there's this big gap here in the middle where I find myself, and a lot of us find ourselves, where there's a lot of life going on. As the young people would call it, we're adulting. And there's a lot to that. Like I said, you're getting married, you're starting your family, having kids, raising kids, maybe young adult children that you're still raising, or young adult, offspring. We don't want to call them children, but that we're still caring for. We've bought houses, maybe we've bought bigger houses, we've got yards to take care of. Of course, we have our careers that we're in the middle of. So there's a lot going on in this middle age. One of the terms that I've heard before is this is kind of the sandwich generation. On one hand, you have your children, maybe even, like I said, young adult children, but you're still caring for them, maybe still sponsoring them a little bit. And then you've got your parents on this end that you're beginning to have to care for and keep up with and keep track of, maybe take to doctor appointments and things. And so a lot going on in this age range. And so the verse I picked for us today is a verse that I like in some regards. I like the message of this verse, but it is written a little bit in the negative. But as I thought about this, I kind of like that too, because there is a little bit of pressure and burden as being middle age, and the people that are counting on you, and some of the responsibilities that you feel. So our verse for this morning is from 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 8. This is the Apostle Paul writing to Timothy, a young man that he is mentoring. So kind of the picture here of the older generation mentoring a younger generation. And he tells Paul tells Timothy, anyone who does not provide for their own, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So like I said, a little bit there that, I think he could have said it another way, like, hey, you're called as a Christian to provide for your own, and especially for your own household. But the way he writes this here, it fits the context of if you don't provide for your own, and especially for your own household, then you're worse than an unbeliever. I thought, that's kind of hit you there. But so the reason I like that verse, part of my perspective at my age is also as a man that raised two boys. And so a 23-year-old and a 22-year-old now that are slowly working their way out of our household and beginning to take care of themselves. And while I was raising them, one of the things that I told them is, it's my job to make you into men. That's my job. We've heard that thing, I'm your parent, I'm not your friend. And it's my job to make you into men. And the way we described that in our household was, a man is someone who takes care of himself and the people he loves. That a man is called to take care of himself and the people he loves. And that was just how we defined it in our household. That was one of the things that we talked to them about, that I hopefully modeled for them. But when I was working with the youth ministry, we would have kids in high school that would, senior year, they would turn 18. And parents, what do you hear when your kids turn 18? Now I'm an adult, right? And so they would try that sometimes with me too. And I said, no. Here's my definition of adulthood. You're not an adult until you pay all of your own bills. So I don't care how old you are, right? If you don't pay your own bills, you don't count as an adult in my eyes, because here's the thing. If I'm footing the bill, I get input, right? If you want me to pay for this, then I get input and I get to make some of the decisions. So if I'm paying for this car, I get to decide where this car goes and where this car doesn't go. I don't care how old you are. Or if I'm paying for this phone, I get to decide when this phone gets used and doesn't get used. I don't care how old you are. So that was our definition of adulthood, is if you want to be considered adult, you have to pay all of your own bills. And so just some of the things that I think, again, from my perspective, what does it mean to be middle-aged? I know there's a lot more to it. Obviously, I don't have time to go into everything it means to be middle-aged, but just focusing on this part, this verse here, and it even implies that I'm called to prepare to provide. And so I've got to think about how I provide for my family now, but I also have to think about how I provide for my family in the future. And I think in some ways, again, it does capture some of the responsibility that I think, at least I feel as a middle-aged person. And so now when I hear people say, I can't wait, young kids say, I can't wait to grow up. Do you really? Wasn't it nice when you were younger and you didn't have all these responsibilities and other people were kind of helping foot the bill and take care of you, and you wanted to be an adult so badly because you wanted to be able to make your own decisions, and then you get to be an adult and you go, gosh, I still can't do everything that I want to do. It might not be my parents, but there's other things that are telling me, hey, you can't do this and you can't do that. And so, there is a lot of that goes on. And so, but I want to look at this verse, and again, maybe for those of us that are middle-aged, but maybe for those of us that are younger and coming up, maybe those that are still older and still trying to find some ways of dealing with some of these burdens and responsibilities that we have, not just as middle-aged people, but as people in general. And so, as I look at that providing, I think some of us, there's a spectrum there. Some of us are on this end of the spectrum where maybe we would call ourselves workaholics. We love to work. We love to provide. We strive for the best. We're ambitious. Maybe some of us are on this end of the spectrum. We're a little bit more laid back. We're a little more carefree. And I don't know that there's anything right or wrong with either of those. I think there's probably a healthy balance. And probably at some times we're a little more on this end of the spectrum. Sometimes of life we get to be on this end, or maybe sometimes during the week we have to be a little bit more on this end of the spectrum, and then sometimes we get to be a little bit more laid back during the week. And so as I think about this, how do we provide in a way that doesn't feel like a burden? Because, right, Jesus said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And so if it does feel like a burden, then something's wrong there. And so how do we balance, as we're trying to provide for our families and ourselves, how do we balance work and rest? That's been a struggle for me as a middle-aged person. I've even thought to myself before, I'll have a project or something I want to do around the house, and I think, gosh, I really just want to have a lazy Saturday. I really don't want to go do this project. And am I being lazy, or do I really just need a Saturday off? And I think some of us maybe wrestle with that. Maybe I'm the only one. But knowing where's the balance? Am I working too hard? Am I not working hard enough? Am I resting enough? That, I think, for me is I sometimes find myself on this end of the spectrum and go, gosh, I just don't relax and chill out very much, and maybe I could do that more. One of the things I used to also say to my boys was, get your work done and then play, work before play. And so for me, when I would tell them that, the way I would explain it to them is, I can't relax if I've got something I know I have to do. And so for them, I would say, if you've got a paper or a test on Monday, and you haven't even started on it, and you want to play video games all day Saturday, if it was me, I couldn't relax and enjoy playing video games all day, because in the back of your head, you're just thinking, I've got to have this paper done, I've got to have this paper done. And so if you'll just start on the paper on Saturday and then play some video games and do a little bit more work, and then you'll be able to enjoy your video games more, because you won't have all that in the back of your head. And do you think they ever took me up on that, or do you think they always waited till Sunday night and they're all stressed out? And I can do that sometimes too. But what I found as an adult is sometimes the to-do list never ends, right? If you said, hey, I'm going to get everything on my to-do list done before I go hang out and relax. If you're like me, and if your wife's like my wife likes to add things to my to-do list, and sometimes I think I scratch one off and two more get added on. But what I found for me to help me balance that work and rest is, maybe I don't have to do it right away, but I have to have it scheduled. So if I say, okay, I'm not going to do this project on Saturday morning, but I know I've got some time on Tuesday to do it, and I don't need to have it done for another week, that helps me to find, some of this sense of burden or whatever you feel that you've got all this stuff going on, finding that if I schedule, at least if I'm not going to do it now, if I know when I'm going to do it, then that helps me relax. That helps me to be able to say, hey, I can enjoy my downtime. Because one of the things that I think is really important, that I think as Christians, a gift that we overlook from God is Sabbath. A gift that we overlook from God is rest. That God rested, and God calls us to rest. And so sometimes, if you're like me, if you have a hard time resting, saying, hey, you know what? Even God rested, and I'm going to rest. And the Bible's clear about not resting too much and not always folding your hands and sleeping all the time, but that God does call us to rest, all of us, not just those of us that are middle-aged, but all of us are called to have a time of rest. And one of the ways that really made that apparent to me is scheduling out my time. One time, I had a job review, and one of the elders suggested that I map out what I do for 2 weeks, write down everything I do for 2 weeks. And they were talking more about work, and I said, okay, but I'm going to do this for the whole time. And when somebody tells you that, first you bristle and you go, well, why are they asking me to write down everything I do for 2 weeks? But when I did it, it was really eye-opening on how I spend my time and what I do with my time. And actually, that was probably about 10 years ago. I've done it a number of times since, including a couple of months ago. And the one thing I realized a couple of months ago was I was never taking a Sabbath. That between work and life and everything going on, we were going 7 days a week every week. And so we've made a commitment now to say, okay, for us it's a little bit different, because obviously I'm here every Sunday. But so Saturday, we really want to make this a Sabbath. And that's how we're going to find, we needed to find some work-rest balance. And for us, that was one way to say, we're really going to try to limit what we do on Saturday, spend time together, spend time building relationships and taking care of those relationships with our family and friends, things like that we want to do. The other thing that I'm almost nervous to say is, in finding this work-rest balance, is learning how to say no. And that doesn't apply when Brian or I ask you to volunteer. at something, right? Don't, forget this part. Uh, but, that it is okay to say no, and I think some of us do struggle with that. We feel like if somebody has asked us to do something, we feel struggle to be able to say no, and then we find ourselves working all the time and missing out on that rest that God has given us and wants for us. And so as I thought about that, it's really knowing what you value, really knowing what's important to you, saying yes to those things, being intentional about doing those things, but then also being intentional about saying no to the things that you don't value. And the simple fact of the matter is there has to be things that we value more than other things. We can't value everything equally the same. And other people's values are not our own, and that's okay. And so if you value something and I don't value it as much and you ask me to participate and I say no, that's okay. We can have, or if I value something and you don't value it as much and I ask you to participate and you say no, that's okay. We can have different values. Something that might be important to me might not be important to you, vice versa. And so it's okay to say no, to say, I'm sorry, I don't have time for that. There's other things that I've got going on. Maybe it is I've got kids in the home, or I've got a parent I have to take care of. There's other things that I'm sorry are maybe you don't say it this way, are more important. But I'm sorry, I just don't have the time for that. So finding this work, rest, balance as we're trying to take care of all of our responsibilities as adults. But as we also think about preparing for the future, I know for me, I hit 40 a couple of years ago, and that was probably when it really hit me. Both of my boys were finishing up with college, and so we had prepared for that, and they had gotten through that, and so it dawned on me like, wow, we better really get on this retirement thing. It's going to be here before we know it. So in the past few years, preparing for our future has been a responsibility now that we've really been focused on, and trying to balance preparing for the future with living in the past. Living in the present. That's something I think, I know I feel as a middle-aged person. I'm sure even some of you that are older than me would say, it's still, hey, I still have to prepare for the future, think about the future, make sure we're ready for it, make sure we've prepared and that I can provide for the future. And so again, maybe some of us are on this end of the spectrum where you're super prepared, you've got a plan down to the T, you may be over-prepared, and maybe some of us are on this end of the spectrum where we just like to live in the moment and things. And where's that healthy balance where we say, I want to balance living in the present, enjoying the life that God has given me now, but I also have to make sure that I am prepared for the future. I had a conversation with my brother. He's one of these people on this end of the spectrum, and we have a business decision coming up. And he said, well, let's do a cash flow analysis for the next 15 years. I said, have fun. You're a lot better at Excel than I am, and you value that a lot more than me. Have fun with that. I said, there's no way. I don't know what the next 15 years. I'm lucky if we're lucky when we just lived through a year where we know. We're lucky if we know what the next year or two. So where's that balance? We can't just say, oh, no, I'm not worried about it. And the balance with our faith. Where do we, as we prepare for the future, we all know that we can't just sit around and go, oh, I'm going to pray about it, and God's going to take care of it. But we also don't have to strive and prepare and then not have any faith. I was reminded as I was thinking about this week of the parable of the rich man who had tons of money. He had great harvest. And he says, I'm going to build bigger barns. I'm going to store everything in barns, and then I'm all set. And Jesus says, no, that's not how it works. And so he called him a fool for putting all of his security in his wealth. But the Bible also talks about people being foolish that don't prepare for the future. And so finding that middle ground, I think as an adult for me, that's been tough, balancing, okay, what are the things we want to do now? I look back and I say, sometimes when our kids were younger, there were some things, we're pretty good planners and preparers, and there's some things that we sacrificed in that time, and I look back and I go, maybe I should have bought that four-wheeler or that dirt bike or that boat, and I'm just the kind of guy that I don't do stuff like that. But, I look back and I go, he said, hey, see, I told you, babe, we should have bought that boat. But, how do you balance when you're making a decision like that? It's a tough decision because now that my boys are older, I go, man, I grew up, my family had a boat, and we grew up on the lake, and so I wanted that for my boys, but we didn't do it, and so it was tough for us, as adults. You have to make those decisions. Do we downsize our house now or not, and some of those things that we have to make. And so, like I said, as adults, I think we know, that's a big age range there, maybe 25 to 70, 75. You're working, your career, your family, and some of those things, and a lot of things to balance, a lot of things to juggle, and a lot of things going on, a lot of things pulling on you. But as Kathy and I talked about this, you said, well, wouldn't it be nice to go back to being 20 and you were young and in good shape and had a little bit more hair? And I said, no. I said, really, even despite all of those things, I really wouldn't want to be any other age than the age that I am right now. And I hope you all feel that way, whatever age you are, that you're enjoying the age that you're in. Because there's pros and cons of every age, and there's things that pull on you no matter what age you're in. But I read something the other day that said, you have 4,000 weeks in your life. I've lived over half of them. I did some quick math. I have about 1,000 weeks to go until I retire. So I'm going to put a big chart on my wall and start ripping down pages until I'm not. But, it just kind of put some things into perspective to me to think, I have 4,000 weeks. I've lived over 2,000 of them. I have about 1,000 to go till I'm retired. What is it that I want to do to find some good balance in my life, to balance my work, to get my work done, but also to make sure I'm having some times of rest. I'm spending time with family. I'm spending time with friends, and I'm doing those things that we're called to enjoy. And the same thing, how do I find that balance? And yeah, I want to prepare for the future. I am called as a Christian to prepare for the future for myself and my family. But how do I also find those times where I'm enjoying the present, not worried about the future, trusting in God that ultimately He has the future under control, and I'm enjoying those things. And so that's what I think as I thought through this more. That's what I hope for all of us, is that no matter what stage of life you find yourself in, that you find other people in your stage of life and outside of your stage of life that can help you with that and that you can enjoy life with, and that you find that balance and enjoy life overall. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, you've given us life and put us here on earth, and sometimes things here are good, sometimes things here are tough, but I think ultimately there's things that we're called to experience and to learn. I think that's not just in a moment, but over the course of a lifetime. That maybe the things that we learn when we're 20 are different than the things that we learn when we're 40, and those are different than the things that we learn when we're 60, and those are different than the things that we learn when we're 80. But God, in all of it, you are moving. You are with us. You are guiding us and leading us. God, hopefully gently correcting us, keeping us on your path, opening our eyes to your grace around us and the grace that you've offered us through your Son, Jesus. God, it is exciting. Like I said, sometimes life is hard, but it is exciting to look back on where you've brought us from. And it's exciting to think about where you are leading us. And so, God, I pray for all of us over this course of these few weeks that we think through, what is it, God, that you're teaching me in this stage? What is it that you have already taught me? How can I help others to learn some of these lessons, and how can others help me to learn them as well? God, I know you're growing each of us. Your Spirit is inside of us, making us more like your Son, Jesus. And that's the hope that we find in him. One day we will be like him, and we will be with you through that power of the Holy Spirit in us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Kings and to the Lord. Who can question any of his words? Who can teach the one who knows all things? Who can fathom all his wondrous deeds? Behold our God, seated on his throne. Come, let us adore him. Behold our King, nothing can compare. Come, let us adore him. You will reign forever. You will reign forever. You will reign forever. You will reign Seated on his throne, come let us adore him. Behold our King, nothing can compare. Come let us adore him.
Michael, somewhere at the end, you said something that made Linda lean over and say to me, so what he's saying is that we're still middle-aged. And so thank you for that, whatever that was you said. And we'll have a good day, rest of the day after that. So we have a number of prayer requests. Paul Tompkins, who's been coming to our church for a while with Robin Johnson, they were at Hilton Head this week and he had to be flown over or transported to Piedmont Hospital with pancreas, liver, and intestine blockages, all three of those. So pray for Paul and that he's getting the treatment that he needs today and being taken care of. Want the Yates friends, Katie. We've been praying for Katie. She was getting better. She's in the hospital, and then I got a message from Jamie, her husband, that she'd taken a turn for the worst. So she's kind of going back and forth, and keep her, Katie, in your prayers. Want to pray for Janine Evans. She went up to Virginia to be with her niece, Jeanette, and for surgery that Jeanette was having, and it was a successful surgery, and she's doing pretty well, so we're thankful for that. And B.J. Smith had a new defibrillator and is doing well. So he had a little tough experience there. He actually but they put his anesthesia, and as they were trying to wake him up, he could hear what they were saying, and they couldn't wake him up, and they thought he was not paying it. So they're pinching him and talking to him, slapping him, and doing all this stuff. And so as you can imagine, it was a little bit of a traumatic experience for him. So pray for BJ that he does well. We also we had a message on our Facebook page this week. A lot of you are on Facebook, but Al Elias died this week, and Al's been with us for a number of years, and we just love Al. And the family, because of COVID concerns, chose not to have a memorial or a funeral service, and they did something out at the graveside. But we've been getting together and been letting people make their own choices here in terms of mask, unmask, and those sorts of things. And Al has just been such an important part of our family. We're still in discussion about something that we might do to be able to come here and spread out during a recognition, a Thanksgiving, some time to reflect on Al's life. And you know, a few weeks ago I had mentioned Al came to us with a group from Kirkwood, and I was somewhat teasing when I said, or mostly teasing, I said, you know, you guys aren't the Kirkwood group, you're our group. And so Al came from Kirkwood, but this became his home. And even they said, as we were talking this morning, you know, that Al's been beloved not just by Kirkwood folks, but by all of us who've known him. And so he's a part of our church family, and these kind of things bring us together. So keep your ears open. We'll send something out. We're gonna talk a little bit after the service and make some plans, and we'll do our best to honor both wishes from this family, but also to give ourselves an opportunity to do some grieving. So pray for Al was just a sweetie. He would call. 92 years old, and he was calling other people in the congregation, and people were calling him. And I went out with Charles this week to see Joe Austin, and Joe said, "Oh no," we told him. He said, "I just left him a message on his answer machine today. He didn't know yet." So we thank y'all for bringing Al to us. And he left you a pretty big role model to follow. So you have to. If y'all start misbehaving, I'm going to say, you think Al would approve of that? Is that what Al would have? No, that's how we will. I might use that. So a couple of other things I think I saw this morning. The Winslows, they came back to visit us, and you came down. Now, I want to say you came down out of the hills. Are there hills around you anywhere? All right, they did come down out of the hills to see us today, and glad to be with them. And Jason started his college, and he's living in a dorm and living the big life. And if you get a chance to say hello to him this morning, we're delighted to have you here. And we also have a celebration next week. This time next week, Jeff Holbrook and his fiancee Glow will be Mr. and Mrs. Jeff Holbrook right over here. So congratulations in advance to you. Yeah, that's wonderful. They're going to be married over in the chapel next Saturday afternoon. And Jeff has, over the years, he's played bass with the band. He's played drums occasionally. And most of the signs that you've seen up, one of the signs that we have, Jeff has helped design those and get those for us. So we appreciate that, all the effort and work he's done. And if you just, so Glow is glowing, but Jeff is also glowing. So it's in a couple of different ways. He's just been kind of walking. I thought he had grown maybe a couple of inches or so. It's looking at his shoes, and what I realized is that he was just floating. His feet hadn't touched the ground for about 4 or 5 months. So congratulations to you as well. As I mentioned, we saw Joe Austin this week. Joe's doing really well. I was very, very pleased to see Joe. So Joe, if you're watching, we miss you. We love to thank you for your care. And y'all would appreciate that. There were about 8 hummingbirds that were flying around, landing on the trees, and they even let 4 of them shared that together. I used to come over your house and see those. How many have these this season? 5? Okay. A few of them may have flown over to Joe's house. I have to talk to him about that. That's right. And so as we go before God in prayer, just looking at, there are a lot of other prayer requests that we need to share. We got Andy's back from Kenya. It's good to see you back, and we're going to hear from you in a few weeks and some of your trips. And God bless you. And Humphrey, I think I saw Humphrey here today. There he is. Hey, Humphrey. And Humphrey's got a United States tour coming up here soon, so he's got a lot on his plate. And but we're going to hear from him while he's here as well. So a lot of good stuff going on while I'm off the cuff. Is it on the cuff or off the cuff? It's off the cuff, right? I don't know. It's off the cuff. So I spend a lot of time writing all this out, typing it out, but every once in a while I kind of go off the cuff. And so you may have seen an email from the church this week We have had some Sunday school classes that have been meeting in person and online, but some of them are starting new books or new studies, and so this is a great time to come in and join as well. And Paul Johnson's class has started a new book today, I believe, or a new study, and so introduction, and I'm sure you can, this would be a good time to join in with them. And the McLean class also, I believe, started today over across the hall, and they've getting back in person. And with the link that we sent, there's some links to some Zoom meet. You can join in. We've got the Sunday school classes set up so that you can actually participate somewhat and be a part of those. So we do, and I think Joe, your class is meeting after. What time do y'all start? As soon as we get done, over in one of the trailers, the far as you go up across the street from the youth group, right there, and y'all are what do y'all you kind of do current events? Yeah. How God works into current events, and they talk a lot. So if you want to join into that and maybe debate a little bit, and hopefully the Bible a lot. The Bible, yeah, okay. Whew, thank you very much. All right, let's pray. God, we thank you. That as we make plans, again, coming back, that our plans are like the wind, and we like to put our plans in pencil, in concrete, and we still are writing them in the clouds with all the changes that happen, and even today with the youth group that they've had to change a little bit. And God, I just pray as we go through these that we do so with an eye to you, our heart trusting in you, openness to hearing from you. And God, we lift up all those who are grieving for loss of friends. We also celebrate with those who are having exciting events, whether it's new jobs or weddings or all sorts of things. God, we lift our hearts up with those folks. The scripture tells us to weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. And as believers, we're called to do that often, and often almost in the same breath. So God, we lift up Paul Tompkins this morning, who's in really, really bad shape, and Katie as well. God heal him. Sometimes I don't ask, and I know that I don't know if it's because I don't want to ask for something that's not in your will, or if it's something that I'm afraid that I might not be answered. But God, I know this. You want us to ask about whatever's on our heart. And the answer may come differently than we expect or hope, but you desire and long to hear from us. So as we come before you in a moment of quiet, we lift up our heart's desires, and we trust you to do what's best with them. Not our will, but your will, Lord, be done. Lord, we come. God, we don't need to go far to see things that we can pray about in the world around us. We can turn on the news, we can open our phone apps, we can go online, and there's just more than we could ever imagine that needs prayer over. God, sometimes we get so caught up in the news that it makes us anxious and worried and fearful. God, help us to turn that around and to look at all the news that's coming our way, and instead use that as a jumping point to pray, to trust, to have hope, and to follow you. God, we do pray for our leaders, both in our church, in our community, and around the world, that we might seek justice, that we might seek peace, and that we might love those that are under our care. God, we seek your will today and always, using that prayer that Jesus taught his disciples to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So this morning, I think it still looks like it's maybe sprinkling out a little bit. I was going to say, if you get a chance, even if the youth group doesn't get a chance to meet back there, to go and look if it's not sprinkling too much. They've done such a wonderful job, but they will reschedule. And on the October 10th date, when we have our picnic, we're going to open up both the food pantry and the youth group area is going to be open for you just to kind of look around and see what we've got going. And a lot of times the churches, especially our size, they get the worst sofas, the worst hand-me-downs, everything that is around. Our kids really have a nice place to meet now, and a beautiful area back there. And so we're thankful for everybody that's been a part of that. And we want you to see where your prayers and work and resources are going. Continue to give. The offering plates are in the back, online, through the office door slot. If you have any problems, let us know. And thank you. Remember to give of your heart to the world out beyond us. The people who are in need out in the world, they need what we have to offer. Hope, good news, joy, especially during these times. Go and be a disciple of Christ. And so as you leave this morning, may God bless you and keep you, make his face to shine upon you. May the peace of God, which passes all understanding, be and abide with you all, today, tomorrow, forever. God bless. Go in peace.
To